Jon, let's start with the concept of what's bugging us the most. Because we all got like 15 different things bugging us. I mean, yeah, the coaches, the defense, the offense, they might be blowing their chance. They might have blown it last year in the Super Bowl, by the way. Like, I'll say this. I did reflect yesterday about something I had said last year that was a holy trifecta of unlikely to ever occur in the next 100 years for the Eagles. Best roster, easiest schedule, barely injured. That was last year. Now, this year's different, as we knew it would be, but they still have the makings in many ways of a great roster. They don't have a great defense, and I'm going to tell you what's bugging me the most. The offense is letting the team down. Let me repeat that. The offense is letting the team down. That's what's bugging me the most, because I recognize that and I recognize coming into the year that the defense wasn't going to be as good, and I accepted that. Like, that's fine. They didn't have to be second in the league statistically against the defense, in the league. They didn't have to have the third most sacks of all time. They weren't going to have that again. And by the way, I mean, just facing better quarterbacks, it was going to be harder. Facing better teams, it was going to be harder. We knew that. I accepted that. I was okay with that. You lose 5 defensive starters from a team that last year made the Super Bowl. You try to replace them. Can a Jalen Carter be an equal to a Javon Hargrave, a prime Javon Hargrave, versus a rookie Jalen Carter? Maybe, if Jalen Carter's exceptional. But you're going to take some steps back. Nakobe Dean wasn't going to be as good as T.J. Edwards. The safeties weren't going to be as good as the pair last year. I accepted that. I was fine with that. But I needed the defense to be, good enough to hang in there. But knowing the defense wasn't going to be as good, and now seeing that the defense really is not good at all, I need an offense to carry the frickin' day. And with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, who just got back, and an offensive line that is supposedly the best in football, and DeAndre Swift, this offense is supposed to be outstanding, elite. This offense is supposed to, you face Dallas and San Francisco, you're supposed to put up points, because the only way you can beat Dallas and San Francisco with this defense is putting up points. So the thing bugging me the most, and I'm curious where everyone stands at 215-592-9494, is how much the offense is letting, everybody down. And by everybody, I mean millions of Philadelphia sports fans. This defense requires this offense to be really good. And it's outrageous that they've struggled as much as they have.
Well, I think your thing that bothers you the most ties right into mine, Joe. We are not playing well. I'm very concerned about that. I think it's the coaches who are calling these plays and not being aggressive enough, not designing the scheme properly on both sides of the ball. That's the biggest issue that bothers me the most. So, yeah, we've got some overlap here. I'm positive our team should look better than we have the last 2 weeks. And the 49ers and the Cowboys have passed us by in the NFC. We should be mad about that. I certainly, you make no mistake, we're not in a good spot. I don't feel great about where we are, but it's not the end of the season. It's not over.
You're right.
I actually think that the fact that the coaching is the biggest culprit for me, I think that's the most correctable of the possible issues at hand. I do think that there were certainly extenuating circumstances as well in these last 2 games. And let's remember, it's 2 games. Let's remember, if we go up there to Seattle and we take care of business, we'll still be 6-2 through this stretch.
It's 2 losses, but it's not 2 games. It's a bunch of games where they've made a bunch of mistakes. I mean, a lot of mistakes.
Okay. And on the offensive side of the football, you know how I feel about running it. We need to do it more. It'll take some of the pressure off Jalen. I don't understand why, once again, we get out of the first half. I look at the box score, and DeAndre Swift has 4 carries. That makes very little sense to me. Why our offense isn't leaning more into the RPR and the RPO. That certainly worked for us early in the season, the first 5 games of the year when we were running it more, and now we've gotten away from it, I guess, in an effort to help protect our quarterback. I think it's a coaching mistake, and I think that can be corrected. On the defensive side, we've talked an awful lot about how the pass rush and the coverage just simply don't match up. The pass rush is getting there, but we've got cornerbacks who are sitting 10 yards off the football. That's coaching. That's design. That can certainly be improved. That can be better. I'm positive that plan this time of year matters a ton. Our defense is still a work in progress because of all the injuries and the substitutions and that sort of thing. I know that what we're doing out there is just not good enough. I don't know. It's not sound enough. I think that can be made better by streamlining things possibly. I've been on teams where they've stripped things down offensively or defensively if it just got to be too cumbersome and too much because you had new guys subbing in. They didn't have all the information. Something needs to change, the defense being a work in progress. Did the players believe in what's being put out there by the offensive and defensive coordinators? Offensive, defensive coordinators, the way these games are called, how do the players feel about that? Is that part of why it feels like we've been flat the last couple games? The last 2 games, we've been passed by the best the NFC has to offer. We are not doomed to slot in behind those teams. If our offensive and defensive coordinator start designing more creatively and playing and calling these games better in a more timely fashion, more creatively, I think that this team certainly can make up that difference. Make up the difference that we just saw us drop.
Boy, they dropped it big time. You know, it's funny as you're talking there, John, I was thinking about Girardi, believe it or not. Now, this is not a call for Sirianni's head because I'm glad he's the Eagles head coach. I want to be very clear about that. But it is interesting. The Phillies were able to unlock their whole existence in 2022 when they fired Girardi June 1st or 2nd, whatever it was. And so this isn't about connectivity. This is just about what you're talking about, basic scheme. Like sometimes I think players can feel, or employees of an employer can feel constricted and restricted based on any number of protocols in place, and there's too much this and there's too much procedure. And like I think what you're saying is just let the guys go out there and do their job more effectively by putting them in better position. The trick with it is I do feel there's been a purpose to, I'll call it play peekaboo with Jalen Hurts this year. Now listen, guys, I'll be honest with you. Maybe Hurts can't adapt effectively enough to an attempt to make him Donovan McNabb 2004. And you got to go back to Donovan McNabb 2001. And you got to say, you know what? If Jalen's at his best when he's just running around and getting 700 yards a year, then maybe that's what you need Jalen to do. And but you also know
there's some of that. I mean, there's some of that battle. Right? You can see that battle being waged. The coaches don't want to take that part away because it is such a weapon to have a quarterback who can give you, 7 seconds of running around with the football. Because no one can cover that long. Yeah. That's such a gift to have that people pried open like that.
Well, listen, we obviously want to hear from you at 215-592-9494. Of all the issues, what is frustrating you the most? What's bugging you the most? What's concerning you the most? James, where are you at here?
Tons of issues concerning. Look, I've defended this team. I believed in this team, and the last 2 games have shaken what I believe in. I think this team looks tired. I think the schedule's caught up with them. I think that, to Richie's point, sure, 7 seconds would be nice. I don't even know if guys will get open then. Being at the game, it is wild. Guys are never open. Like, the throws that he has to make are tight, and Jalen has not been good enough. He has been a problem. The biggest thing that's bugging me is, look, to Richie's point, the season's not over. They're 10-3 and all that.
There's no question.
But it feels like, when you watch this team right now, that this defense is a fatal flaw. I do not believe right now in this moment that this defense is going to be able to get stops to win 3 or 4 games in the playoffs. Like, how could you watch this defense each week and say they're going to make a play?
Who do you blame for that, James? Is that Howie?
No. Well, so look,
is it bad luck that they have so many great offensive players and paid them?
No. Look, I think you have to build a team a certain way. I think it's part on Desai. I think it's look, where'd the pass rush go? Like, there's
know.
no pressure. Those guys are studs up there. We got Reddick, and we got BG and Fletcher Cox, all these guys making tons of money, and then you got Jalen Carter and all that. Like, there's been no pass rush at all the last weeks, and maybe that's tired legs, but look, I don't think Desai's been good, but the philosophy of the Eagles defense is get pressure with those front four, and if those guys aren't getting pressure, they got no chance, especially with how little talent they have in the back end and in the middle.
I'll say this.
I'm struggling with it.
I was frustrated. This is going to sound weird. I was frustrated after the game to find out the Eagles had 3 sacks because it didn't feel like they had 3 sacks. Like, I don't want any excuses. Well, they got 3 sacks. Knock that off. They did not get enough pressure on Dak Prescott in that game to affect him, to move him off his spot consistently, to rattle him, to get his mind sped up.
They got no pressure on Dak because he's running a system where he's going, he has the ball in his hands, 1 to 2. Okay, now that clock is used up. I'm going to take off and run. I still downfield. I might get to 3 while I'm running. And he's raving about how he's figured it all out. Dak Prescott's raving about how the way he's running his offense is different than every offense he's ever experienced in the past. Well, Brian Johnson was his coach in the past. Brian Johnson didn't coach him as well as Mike McCarthy is coaching him right now. And we just saw the proof.
Oh, we did.
On Sunday night.
Look,
that hurts.
We'll ask you, what is bugging you the most about this whole thing? Because everybody's in a bad mood. And listen, to the point's been said a few times today, they can overcome this. Now, James brought up a good point. Maybe the defense will make it almost impossible for them to, but they can. But, man, they got to dig down. They got a lot of stuff to correct.